Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Table Talk. I'm your host, Jake Combs, and tonight we are going to be looking at the Thondian Strongpoint. So this is the terrain kit that goes along with the Theater of War book for Thondia specifically. I can't remember, or Season of War, rather, not theater. Now, one of the big things that was in that rule book that we hadn't had before was the Incarnate, basically predatory, endless spell. And so this box is actually currently the only way to actually get that. Now, when this box was first announced, we'd reached out to our contacts at Games Workshop and just to see if we could actually get a review copy. And they actually told us no. And then a day or two later, they sent me a notice saying that they actually had one in the mail for me. So this was provided by them for the purpose of our review. Personally, I am very excited about the Incarnate itself. Now, the terrain set itself is really cool. I really like the statues. I really like the buildings. But what has me most excited is this kind of floating island that's chained to the ground. I don't know that we've actually seen that specific style building released before, because I know that it looks like a cross between the Lumineth Realm Lords exclusive terrain piece and the Pen and Brawl engine on top. Now, once we get inside, we'll see exactly what it is. But my understanding is that that is also new. And then we also have this giant skeleton for this creature. Not sure exactly what it's supposed to represent. But let's go ahead and get in there and take a look. Now, I'm going to be using my knife to open this, because knives make everything easier when it comes to opening packages and boxes. And just make sure that if you are using a knife yourself, that you are pointing the blade away from yourself for safety. And if you are not old enough to where you should be using a knife, then make sure that you have parent supervision. So let's go ahead and open this thing up. All right. Now, the first thing, and this isn't something that I've commented on recently with all the other unboxings that we've done. So not every box really has this, but when I opened the box, that new plastic smell is just so strong with this box compared to many of the other ones we've done. And like typically, like even when we have a box full of stuff like this one is, there's some sort of smell to it. And the last few boxes that we've done that were full of stuff, they really didn't have that smell. And if you've ever opened up a big box and smelled it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's one of those things that I personally look for when I'm opening up a box. It kind of gives you an idea for how recently produced it was. And the older it is, the less smell it has. Now, with some of those other boxes, with them being brand new kits, I would have expected to have that smell. Now, most of the other ones did not recently, again, but this one, it is one of the strongest new plastic smells I've smelled in a good long time. So I know personally for me, that's always an exciting thing to have. Is it crucial to the experience? Not at all. But it is one of those things that immediately kind of like checks a box in my mind for we're about to get into some really cool stuff. So looking at the first sprue, this is for that kind of water tower. We have like the water itself coming off. And I really like that there's holes in it to kind of show like the gaps in the water, because it's not going to be complete sheets of water at all times. Now, what I wish they would have done with this is like done some sort of like clear plastic or clear resin for the water pieces themselves, so that way like you could dye it like certain colors and have it kind of be opaque, and I think that would have given it a really cool effect. But you know, with the holes in there, you still get some of the see-through ability. Now the structure itself, the kind of swirling whirlpool, there's a ton of detail here, especially when you're looking at the machine itself and the walls around it. Just so much detail in just like a single sprue. We're gonna go ahead and set that out. We'll do a zoom in a little bit, and then this is the, I assume is the other complete half of that same piece. Again, tons of detail, like where it shows the water hitting, like you can see some of the ground and then the water splashing up as well. The rocks have a lot of detail in them as well. Now, like we even have these ground pieces right here that are full of skulls and skeletons, you know, just giving this piece a lot of overall life, you know, make it really stand out, and you know, kind of almost tells a story at the same time. And let's see. All right, so this sprue itself is for that giant skeleton. A lot of detail, like you can see a lot of like kind of wear and tear on the skeleton itself. You know, because this thing has been exposed to the elements, and like this piece of vertebrae that's broken, you know, that's not a shipping issue. That's, you know, intentionally broken as far as like how they designed it, so that way like inside you can kind of see like some of the detail, like the marrow and like the outer layer of bone around it. You know, so that attention to detail, the folks at GW have always done a great job at that, just giving a lot of personality just in a little bit of space. And so some very cool stuff. Now with one of the pieces, I'm guessing it's kind of towards the head, maybe the neck of the skull, of the body. I think it's maybe part of the jaw. Now, like with some of the detail there, it almost looks like some markings of chaos. But with this being a skeleton and, you know, not doing anything else, and there's no other, you know, references to chaos that I can see, it tells me that it's just kind of a coincidence as far as how it looks. But definitely a very cool piece. So much detail on the bones. I mean, like even these big rib pieces that are coming off, you know, you have just so much wear and tear already like pre-etched into them. And I mean, with this being, you know, mostly bone, you're really not going to have a lot of, you know, variation when it comes to, you know, color, because, you know, bone is typically one color, or, you know, some slight shaded variations. You know, it's not like you're going to have like each vertebrae, you know, alternating between absolute different colors like brown and blue and pink and so on. And, you know, so that with, you know, with them all being a pretty consistent color, other than, you know, the ground stuff, this is going to be, you know, overall a pretty easy piece to paint. Now with the number of pieces, you know, it's not going to be extremely easy to put together, but I would say probably easy enough. But the kind of pen and brawl engine with the waterfall thing, that has a ton of intricate pieces, and so that's going to be a lot more work to do. Then we have, let's see, okay, that's interesting. Typically when we received a box that has one of these kind of shielded statues, the box is always coming with two. So this is basically statue number 5 for us. And so like with that trend, I expected there to be 2 in here, and there's actually only just the 1. Hi Moira, and say hello to my cat, everyone. She's very curious today. What you doing, weirdo? Now, the rest of the kit is, other than the fact that there's only one of these sprues, is the same as what we've seen before with the previous statues. So we're not going to zoom in real close on this one. So we're just going to set that aside since there's nothing special there as far as uniqueness, something that we haven't seen. Same with the building that's under construction. There's actually two of those, let's see, and they are actually different sprues, but there are, from the previous kits, there were two different buildings at least anyway. So these are, you know, again, we've seen them before, we've shown them before on the show, so we're gonna set those aside. And then, so the last sprue that we have is the Incarnate itself. And I mean, this is, you know, a combination of magic and skeleton and, you know, kind of just monstrous nightmare in general. And I mean, you have kind of like streaks of magic coming off of it. You have so much detail just in the bonework, and I mean, this thing is going to be so much fun to paint. I cannot wait. One thing I really like in the details here is that, you know, it's basically going to make this whirlwind of a skeleton, and like these pieces where you kind of have the magic trails coming off, like you have big gaps in the vertebrae that's being held together by the magic, and so it kind of adds to the overall look. And like the only thing that I wish they would have done differently with this, as far as visually, is, you know, basically done, you know, one of these, but to the same exact scale, so that way, like, you could basically have it start out as, you know, the terrain piece, and then have it become this. And I think that that's kind of a missed opportunity there. But just, again, there's so much detail. I am so looking forward to building and painting the Incarnate. And I mean, this thing just looks so awesome. And again, there's just so much detail. It is probably one of the most detailed individual pieces that I've really looked at in a good little while. I mean, obviously, you know, most of the pieces have a lot of detail, but I mean, this one, with just all of the different elements coming together, is just I mean, I would say that, you know, pretty dang close to a masterpiece as far as you know, modeling is concerned, in my opinion. I honestly, I could stare at this sprue for a while just looking at all of the intricacies on here, and they just did an absolutely fantastic job. And then we'll zoom in on those sprues here in a little bit. And for, assuming I can pick it up, there we go. So here's the base for the Incarnate. All right, so here's the aquifer part 1. I actually don't know if the sprues are actually numbered or lettered like they sometimes do, but I know that the pieces are numbered as always, so you'll be able to find them pretty quickly. Oops. I mean, just look at all these details just on the rocks themselves. You know, we have the skulls, and over here we have a skeleton. Like, the only downside to having terrain like that is, you know, like if you're fighting against someone like doing like Soulblight Gravelords or you know, Legions of Nagash, and you know, they're using a necromancer, having that still on the board may not exactly fit, but you know, it definitely still looks cool. And then, so here's the giant skeleton. Let's go ahead and turn this over. Let's just see the other side of the bones, because the bottom pieces are more hollow than anything else. And then here we are with the Incarnate. And like I said, there's just so much detail and just so many kind of thematic parts of the model that all just come together beautifully. And I really can't wait to actually get this built. And I mean, based on how it looks when it's done, I think it's probably going to be best to do it in pieces, like the first spiral and the second spiral as separate pieces, and then put them together, so that way you have a little bit more control over reaching the different painted areas. But definitely going to be a little bit of a challenge and a lot of fun to paint. We do have one of our normal inserts that we're used to seeing. We have our assembly guide, doing the multi-tone style as well, which honestly at this point for new models I would be surprised if we didn't see that. Now let's see, so it starts off with the floating island thing, and so it's called the cleansing aqualith. And the skeleton is the Megadroth remains. And then the Incarnate is Kronspine Incarnate. I knew I was forgetting part of the name. We have the Guardian Idol, which again we've seen before, as well as the Domicile Shell with Winch and the Domicile Shell. Again, those are all things that we've done before. But I mean, just for a terrain box, this thing is packed full of stuff. From what I've read, this box goes for about $200, and just with the sheer amount of terrain that comes with it, I'd say it's pretty dang worth it. And then I actually didn't realize this prior to just now, but there is a terrain board as well, so that way you can kind of match them all thematically to the one board, if you wanted to, obviously. Now, so it looks like we actually got two boards in here. So here's the side that we see in the pictures, and then this side we actually don't. But the side that we actually see in the pictures, I actually like a lot better. There's a lot more detail. You can actually see like kind of broken roads and things like that, as well as like broken tiles for underneath where the structures were meant to be built, and maybe reclaimed by Gur itself. And let's see. I mean, at a glance, these look like they might have been the same, but they're definitely not. So that's good. I mean, I wouldn't have expected them to be the same. And then again, we have the alternate side as well. And these boards, I mean, you could easily do one to play your whole game on, or you can put them together and have a much bigger battle area. But obviously, you know, the bigger your force and the more terrain you're using, the bigger you're gonna want your map to be. So that way it all kind of doesn't get too cluttered. So that way you can, you know, move your forces around and, you know, actually have a good game without all these terrain features blocking that path. Unless, of course, you know, you're using like a Mega Gargant and having them smash the terrain to bits to make that path. And I mean, that could actually make for an interesting game. You know, basically have each side, you know, have some sort of monstrous creature that's going to destroy the terrain, and you know, basically whoever destroys it last is going to be the one to actually be able to push through, depending on how they do their turns, obviously. You know, so if you have, you know, your Gargant go first and, you know, they destroy the terrain, then all of your, you know, your battle line can then push past it and go through that pathway to get to the other side and, you know, start the attacking. And I mean, it could definitely make for an interesting maybe narrative gameplay. I don't think that would really work in like maybe a competitive setting, or your just traditional games, just because of the uniqueness of the setup that you would need. But definitely could be a little interesting just to try it out. I've never tried that myself. Personally, like even with the abilities to destroy terrain, I don't typically do that. It's more so because I forget that I can in the game, and so I'm so used to going around the terrain like we've done in all the previous editions that I've played. So going through the terrain, breaking it and discarding it is definitely still a very new concept to me. So definitely one of those things that want to try to remember to make use of when it will fit with my strategy. But as far as that goes, so we're going to zoom in on the models now, and then once we're done looking at those, that actually is it for just regular Age of Sigmar that we'll be filming tonight. As soon as this video is done recording, it's actually going live almost immediately. The other video we're filming is actually going to post in a week or two, I believe 2 weeks. So stand by for that one, but I can't really say too much about what that one entails. But definitely some cool things on the horizon. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all have a great night.